Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Ecosystems Podcast. This is episode 5 for us. We have covered a lot of ground. And today, Andrew, if you have the chance of bringing up and putting on screen there, we'll be discussing the final layer of the pyramid. And from there, we are really interested in your feedback as into where we will go. But what we've covered so far of the strategic pyramid, we've talked about, particularly the top 2 layers is where a lot of people are operating in at the moment, which deals with, building solutions and then the governance around those solutions. So in the last episode, we delved deeply into building the platform ecosystem. And today we're going to focus on architect the strategic foundations. Right, which is really, it's new for a lot of people, and it's where the high comes going forward. And so with that, Andrew, Anna, why don't you walk us through the architect the strategic foundations, and we will take it from there. But before we do that, actually, why don't we do a round of introductions? Because that's what we do here. Chris Huntingford. This week, I saw you in very flash attire.
Yeah.
I saw you the week before in Vegas in not so flash attire. I think you got I saw your legs were out, new tattoo. I saw you presenting to, I think it was about 2,500 people were in the session that you were in. And you were walking around in white socks in your presentation, like, fuck shoes. It's you nailed it. But and the crazy thing is that I spent a whole week in Vegas with you and didn't even speak to you once, apart from sitting in the back of your session there. But I got to cuddle your wife a few times and say hello there, so that was nice.
Yeah, she said I was very jealous, not of you cuddling her, but she cuddling you. But man, thanks for coming to the session. Like when I saw you at the back, I'm like, yes, this is awesome. And it's a pity about the tech. I was a bit pissed about that, but yeah, man, thank you for coming along.
Your content was on point, my friend. In fact, I'd like a copy of those slides. You said something about you're going to post them in the app, but I never saw any functionality in the app that allowed for that.
No, I just chucked a link in the comments, man. But I'll fire them over to you. Don't worry, I'll send them over.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
I saw the great sock incident of 2023 on LinkedIn, but what was why socks? Why no shoes?
Dude, I just don't like presenting in my shoes. Like I do it sometimes. Yeah, but
okay.
I don't know, it's weird. And also the thing is those stages were really long and they weren't deep, right? So you had to do a lot of walking across to get to keep the attention, right? Mm-hmm. So I was like, you know what,
And that's on top of walking at the conference. I have not had a blister on my feet in years, yet I got a blister the first day because you are forever walking literally miles to go from one side of the hotel to the other, right through, and I was in another hotel, so therefore that's another 4 hotels you walk through because of the way Vegas, one casino in Vegas is connected to the next. You never know when you walk through that hole in the wall, you're actually leaving one casino and you're now in another one, and it just goes on forever and ever and ever. And man, the amount of walking you do there is just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's bonkers, man. It was insane.
Well, and Chris, in fairness, though, going, not wanting to wear shoes during your presentation, I could be wrong about this. We'd have to look it up. But I'm pretty sure that dinosaurs, when they presented at conferences, they also did not wear shoes. So you're following in the literal footsteps of your spirit animal, your spirit species.
Yeah, dude, it's my kin. The Ankylosaurus would never wear shoes when presenting formal presentations to its co and kin. So yeah, abso-freaking-lutely, man. It was an epic conference. You know what they say? You know what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas? That's bullshit, man. Mm-hmm. I brought a tattoo and COVID back with me. It definitely does not stay in Vegas.
And what was the tattoo?
I have a Dataverse tattooed on my leg because it's actually a real database. And I feel like, the icon is cool. It looks like a green ceiling fan.
Why do you keep doing that to yourself?
I want to remember the good times.
Well, yeah, but you also have a Power Apps and a Power Automate.
I have a Power Apps tattoo. It's on my
Sorry,
lower
you have
back.
your Microsoft Flow.
No, Power Apps, but it's the Power Apps one word, not with the space. And it's the logo.
Right. Why do you do that to yourself? It's not okay. I'm sure like there are support groups.
No, I wanted a slutty lower back tattoo on my lower back, and I got a Power App one because I thought, that's the way to go.
That is a bit slutty, you're right.
Yes. I love it. I love it. Anna, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and where in the world are you today?
So I'm home with my parents. I flew out of London on Monday to avoid having, a baby in the midst of moving houses. I am going through a bit of a screwed up time at the moment with our house is being flooded by all the rains in London, and like the move has been horrible, and property solicitors in the UK suck big time. Looking at you, Alexander JLO, worst conveyancing
Public service announcement right there.
at all times, yeah. Other than that, you know what? I'm good. I'm good to be having this chat with you. Last week, we presented on strategic thinking for the Microsoft Cloud. So this is like the perfect subject to be had right now after having a few conversations with, and gathering some feedback from people who are in it right now, who are either dubious about AI or worried about AI or worried about their company or thinking they're ready for artificial intelligence, etc., etc. So, yeah, mixed bag for me, but mostly bad. I'm mostly not doing well.
Did you say where in the world you were? You said you went to your hometown. You said, okay, all right. So
Nobody knows where parents live.
Where is
where the parents
where is
Oh,
the hometown?
yeah. I'm in Romania. I'm sorry. I'm in Romania, Brașov, Romania. It's actually a very lovely town, though I didn't go out yet.
It's a beautiful city. Brașov is a beautiful city. Gorgeous city.
Nice. So good. Andrew.
You want a where in the world? I am having my third night in our new flat in London. Anna, what she didn't mention is that she did go home and she took the baby home, but that left me to do this move. So I've been doing my utmost the last several nights to get everything arranged so that when Anna comes home in a couple of weeks, she'll walk in and she'll be like, oh my God, this place is beautiful. Because on Saturday, I'm meeting her in Romania and we are flying off on our honeymoon. We had a proper wedding last month and now we're having a proper honeymoon. So we're going to go to Bali by way of Qatar. That's the plan for Saturday. So
Wow.
We are off. Yeah. And then we're coming to visit you, sir.
Yes. Anna told me.
Leave it to us to say, while we're in Bali, we might as well stop in New Zealand because they're close.
It's not that close. It's not European close.
Normally, we're good with geography, but maybe not this time. We thought they were close. They're not. Nothing's close to New Zealand, man. Nothing.
Yes, correct. And that includes nuclear weapons, all right? They're not close to New Zealand either. So true.
Pretty much stopping in New Zealand while we're in Bali is like saying, yeah, we were in London, so we thought we'd stop and see friends in Seattle while we were in the neighborhood. That's basically the equivalent right there.
I mean, I'm not sure it's quite that, not quite Seattle.
No, Seattle is right, because it's a 9-hour flight, isn't it, between London and Seattle?
The internet knows, but yes, it is a 9-hour flight, more or less.
Yeah, so it is about the same then. But if you were stopping off in New Zealand on the way somewhere, that place you'd be going would be Antarctic.
But anyway, this is where we are, and we are here to talk about architecting the strategic foundations.
Trust Demity to get right into it, eh? No, behave yourselves. No more small talk. Let's get cracking.
No. Let's look at. All right, London to Seattle. We can all see is
Nice.
4,806 miles.
Right.
And then let's say
Bali to Auckland.
Bali to Auckland is so we'll say what is it? DPS to AKL, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Is okay. It's slightly closer at a distance of 4,190 miles. It is slightly closer.
Not much.
Right. Okay, Anna, we can go back to what you were doing. I'm sorry.
I thought that was important because when we talk about building up the platform ecosystem, that sounds pretty strategic to me and to other people as well, right? So the moment you think about implementing some solid foundation, to your systems, when you're thinking about looking at the entirety of your data in your customers, organization, or when you want to do enterprise data governance and integrate everything in a certain way and have sort of patterns, then that seems quite strategic. So that's why I thought it was really, really interesting to have these two put together and to emphasize the difference a little bit. I believe that architecting the strategic foundations takes everything above it and structures it in a way that fosters, success and continuous success. Because oftentimes, what people want, organizations, partners and Microsoft and customers, what they want is to start doing some work and then create loyalty, right? They wanna have a customer and then have that customer forever. They want to be friends. They want to be able to really guide their system and their systems and processes. And this is where architecting the strategic foundations comes into play. This is a sort of work for very mature organizations and for highly senior, individuals, because it requires expertise and experience and knowledge, and also the ability to listen to, other experts within the organization, so that you can actually create and execute a vision for your customer and for your organization as well. At this point in time, we are definitely going in with a series of reference architectures, and we can see how all of those connect, with each other, and maybe similarly to a building architecture design. Once you have that, you know exactly what to change where, if everything is written down properly and if everything is structured in a way that's sustainable for the whole building. Yes. And then we go into more details as well, such as maybe the tipping point for most people and for most of our listeners and Microsoft partners as well, which is workload prioritization and how to do that. How can you isolate the things that need to be done right now with the things that can be done later, with the things that will allow us to get to where we want to be. So how do we isolate crisis and whoever shouts the loudest to align to our actual executive vision? So today's episode is very much about that. So yeah, and it's going to be fun because the other people on this podcast are going to talk as well. So don't worry. Don't go away.
So a couple of things jumped to mind here, as you were explaining this. And for me, I look at each of those items: executive vision, workload prioritization, ecosystem mapping, reference architecture, data.
So Andrew, what do you think? Why do we even have this layer? Why didn't we just stop at building the platform ecosystem?
My question is this a one and done type process of doing? Now, of course, I know it's not, and I'm asking that question.
You're leading the witness here,
yeah,
right?
Because,
yeah.
But is it something that's really done? Definitely not on a quarterly basis, maybe on an annual basis, maybe on an annual basis. It is strategy, and you don't alter strategy every 5 minutes in an organization.
So, Mark, you were just asking, you were talking about basically, is this a one and done? Mm-hmm. Does this go on? Yeah. So, first of all, going back just a minute, this is such an important way of thinking and way of doing business. I was in a call with an organization earlier today, and they said, no, we really just want to build out the platform and we can do strategy later. And I was very transparent with them. I said, alternatively, we could get a bunch of money and put it in a bag and set fire to it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that kind of drove home the point, but it's not exaggeration. I mean, no. This is where so many organizations have gone wrong because they've plowed into not even building the platform ecosystem, but say the conditions for success, which they wrap up as governance and infrastructure and all those sorts of things. And they have no vision. They have no vision for where they're trying to take the technology, why they're investing, what are the guiding principles and the outcomes they're trying to achieve that are going to achieve that vision. So the reason that I backed up when you asked that question, right, is that outcomes that you're trying to achieve as an organization they're not static, right? But I also think that organizations make a mistake when they say, oh, we're only going to think strategically on an annual basis, right? This is something that has to happen all the time, right? You might have a burst of energy where you put some real brain space and some real time into this, say, on a quarterly or an annual basis. But if you then just do that and walk away from the strategy, then you might as well, again, you put a bunch of money in a bag and you've set fire to it. Yeah, so this is ongoing, and it's not like a one-off where we do it in a neat little calendar. We do it according to a neat little calendar.
I agree. Yeah. I 100%. I think some of the orgs we're working with, they're like, okay, we're going to set the executive vision and we're going to start setting the strategy, and then that's that for the next 4,000 years. I'm like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Like, why? So what we want to do is we want to kind of get a great vision for the next X amount of time, okay? And then you're always going to review that strategy underneath the vision, because the strategy is effectively how you execute the vision, right? And that might change. So the vision might be X, right, and the strategy might be implement X, implement Y, implement Z, do A, B, and C, map to these KPIs / whatevers, and then you have success. But if you look at tools like Low Code and Copilot, they're constantly changing, legitimately all the time, and therefore your strategy will change and will have to change depending. And it's the same with data, right? Like, you can't say, okay, our 5-year dream is to put in a SQL data warehouse to centralize data, and then 5 years' time, you've got things like OneLake. Nope, absolutely not. Yeah, so you have to review. I always say to folks, you've got to bolt this to, it's got to be your vision, your strategy, and your plan, right? And then if you bolt those three together and review every sort of 3 to 6 months, that's good, depending on the cadence of how fast you want to go through the program.
And if you look at the activities, right? I do this with CIOs all the time. I mean, I pretty much at this point, my entire professional life is lived inside of architecting these strategic foundations. And sometimes I branch out into building the platform ecosystem, right? But that's mostly to just make sure that what we've actually architected is being properly built and executed. And we're getting a nasty echo.
Yeah, that's all right.
I was just going to say, if you think about, to Chris's point, right, these activities, the vision is all about what are we trying to achieve with the technology, and really importantly, how does the CIO or the CISO, Chief Information Security, or the Chief Data Officer, how do those organizations go from being superintendents of a utility company to being actual strategic leaders within the business? And that's a huge mindset change for IT leaders. But the vision, the executive vision is all about where we're going and what are our guiding principles and outcomes to get there. And then we just start layering on. So workload prioritization is about saying, here are all the problems we're trying to solve, the apps we're trying to migrate, the things we're trying to achieve. What's the priority order? We can't do everything at once. And then when we map the ecosystem, we arrange all of those things into our city map, and we go on. The reference architecture gets even more specific. And what we're doing really is we're building up an overall architecture and direction that the folks who are working to build the platform ecosystem can then take and run with. So this feeds every level of the pyramid on up.
But you have to be able to pivot. That's the thing, dude. Like
exactly.
What I've found is because we use the city map view as well, the tube map, right? And things are going to change so rapidly, so rapidly. Like now, we've got customers going through the enablement program, and all of a sudden, new tech gets dropped in, or new things get dropped in, and then we have to be able to pivot, right? I don't think that organizations with legacy vision and strategy built in by, I would say, some of the big four have the ability to pivot. I just don't think they can.
Well, if the big four themselves can't pivot, how do they encourage their customers to pivot?
Yeah.
Badly.
So, but my question is then, well, I've got a couple of ones. Chris, give us an example of technology. You're saying about being in a position where you can change, but technology, although we in our roles are on the cutting edge of it, for most organizations don't change that rapidly. And most organizations don't have the ability to execute outside a financial year. So let's say new technology comes out in FY23. They have not allocated budget to take adoption. So it's going to at least be FY24 before they touch that thinking, maybe FY25. So are we talking about a very slow moving, process? I can only see, SMBs being in a position to move quickly in that scenario. SMC space, the enterprise space doesn't have that ability to move as such.
It's really hard. And this is where we have to have our eyes on the future quite a lot. So yeah, it's exactly the tyranny of the deliverable. What I've found is that when you're looking at doing an enablement program with the customer, right? If you are I want to tell you about this discussion I had with this one guy, and I promise I will pivot out of this, right? But we did this panel. Okay, so Andrew, myself, Will, and Rory did this panel with AJ, and we were the word ecosystem came up, and the guy was like, this dude Bora came out to me afterwards, and man, this guy was amazing. I think he was a neurologist, and he's like, hey man, do you think the business is the ecosystem or the industry is in the ecosystem? And I said, no, I don't think either is. I think it's down to your circle of reference and sphere of reference. Okay, so if you are standing looking directly down at your feet, your ecosystem is your area of control. Mm-hmm. Okay, but if you're standing on the moon, all of a sudden larger areas become your ecosystem, and you care about fewer things that are smaller. Okay, so when we are putting a program in with a customer, the person putting in the program, the organization, has to have the foresight and the ability to zoom out and zoom in. And this is something that I'm really passionate about. So in the customers we're working with, I know that Copilot is a big deal. Okay, I'm not looking just at low code. I'm looking at Copilot, data, loads of other things, right? So the executive vision that I want to put out will include those things for the next FY and the next FY based on how far I can see, okay? And that's because I read, I do research, I talk to you. If the company has not got the capability and capacity to do that, I think the program will fail.
There's an element here, though, of Chris, the way that most organizations, the ones that Mark is talking about, where they budget they budget for technology according to fiscal year, that model has got to die, right? That was an acceptable model. That was an acceptable model when we had these big gaps between major technological change. And this is going to be hard. Like Mark is smiling like, yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah.
But my response is good luck not doing that in the end. You're gonna limp along for a couple more years. But you have to go to this model. You have got to adapt to you have to budget for uncertainty. You cannot get into these long engagements with your technology budget where you're working off 2 or a 5-year roadmap as if anything that's happening in 12 months, let alone 24 months, is still going to be the way it is today. Like, that's not a thing, and you are ruining yourself by locking yourself into that budgetary model. It's a huge change that has to happen.
But the thing is that the minute you talk about budgets, you have to go very high in the executive layer of an organization. We're not talking about any of the doer roles in the organization. We're talking about executive decisions being made. And so my question comes back to, if we look at our audience, if we look at who listens to this show, etc., and I'm not saying that people are not playing in that space, but I'm saying that people are not playing in that space as a rule that are in our ecosystem.
We don't have a lot of C-levels listening to our podcast because they're busy, it turns out.
I don't think they're in the, the Microsoft, I don't want to say weeds, but like in the stuff around choosing technology and stuff. They have people that do that for them, and they get a report on their desk, and in a board meeting, they make a decision if this is the way to go. They're not the ones doing the research. They're not the ones, they're wanting to read a summary with a, $20 million budget or $10 million budget at the bottom and go, okay, is this going to be a valuable, sign it off. So I'm saying, who is this discussion for? Is it only CXO levels? Convince me.
I half wonder if you're like trying to tee me up for an advertisement of my services. Like this is, or as Donna Sarkar told me over the weekend, she was like, Andrew, you were therapy for CIOs. And that's
therapy for CIOs. I like it.
Digital psychology, man. Digital psychology 101.
Yeah. But it goes back to the question that, we were talking about a moment ago where, it is so important here that these leaders, these executive leaders, make the transition from being superintendents of a utility company, right? I keep the lights on, the phones on, the email running. I am now, as a technology leader within a non-technology company, I am now you are now a strategic leader. You need to be a strategic leader, and you need to be driving all of the different pieces that are going to make a difference here. And it has to do with budgeting. It has to do with people. It has to do with technology. But yeah, the CFO has to be your friend, and CFOs have to change their ways here because the way you budget is killing you. Institutional barriers are killing you now.
I think that driving is a really good word here, because so many times you talk to CIOs, CTOs, and they are proudly serving their company rather than driving it. Their role is to enable their teams to solve problems. And it's not very often that they look at things strategically or that they actually have a vision for anything. They are a CIO or a CTO, a technical C-level in a non-technology company, and they cannot afford to go and propose a budget that's going to be fluid. No one's even like, that's not their business. So is that a thing that we should change? Is that a thing that we are here to influence? Do we believe that this is something that eventually will actually drive value on the product that the company is selling in general? What does technology do after all?
So I'm working with I won't name names, but I'm working with an organization right now with a CIO. And his organization has been, they've taken an investment from private equity, and they are engaged in a lot of M&A, merger and acquisition activities. So they're buying companies, right? But one of the things that they're trying to do is they are trying to use the investment that they have to become the preeminent offerer of the services that they provide in the geographic markets where they provide them. And what I love about working with this particular CIO is that, and fair game, this is not a tech company. This is an industrial company, okay? And their entire attitude, their entire approach here is that we are building value in the company by embracing ecosystem oriented cloud technology. That is, and their belief is that that is going to build value for our shareholders, the private equity firm. That's going to build value for their employees, and that's going to build value for their customers, especially as they acquire new companies. And essentially, the companies that they acquire become beneficiaries of the modernization that is happening across the portfolio here. So I realize that we're pretty far afield of the usual technology conversations that we have, but I believe absolutely that the innovative and the strategic thinking CIOs and other C-level folks are starting to catch on to this, because I'm seeing it in the market.
So how do kind of senior people, and I'm talking about senior people now that are part of the Microsoft ecosystem that we have all come from, how can they move up to that level of having those executive conversations? Because as you've talked, I'm like, Andrew, this really makes sense for you as an individual and your role.
Sorry.
Right? And that totally makes sense to me. But how do we get to the point that you can upskill maybe somebody that's an architect that's really developing their executive engagement skills to actually then have these conversations?
My first thought here is that there is no course. And before, Mark, you ask, yes, I'm working on a course.
Yeah.
But as of now, as far as I know, there's no course about this. And even if there was, and when in the near future there will be, I think that this is one of those areas, and frankly, it's just like so many areas that we look at, right? You can take a course or a class on how to architect a solution or build a data model, but until you've been exposed to it multiple times, all you have is theoretical knowledge. You have to kind of acquire the experience of having seen it, having done it, and really importantly, having failed at it or seen what fails. So as always, what I'm going to say is that the number one way to elevate to kind of take your conversations and the discussions you're able to have, right, is to seek experiences with the people who already do this, right? And, I realize that might make it sound easy, but I see this all the time where people in the architect role, whether you're a solution architect, enterprise architect, I think that this movement around ecosystem architecture is really trying to change this, right? But you need to elevate yourself, right? Don't step out of the conversation because it breaks, it goes outside the boundary or the membrane of your solution, right? Or of your technology. So as always, pick up the experience by just starting these conversations, by working with people who are already doing it. And I think that, this cloud strategist role, so to speak, is it's few and far between. There are not a lot of people in the industry who do this, but we desperately need there to be more. So there's your invite.
Okay. So here's the question, because I want people to listen to this and go away with tangibles, right? Not theories. And if you created this job description for this role, what skills are you looking for somebody that's not necessarily at this level yet, but are going to move into it? What are you going to want to see on their CV around two things? One, formal learning and education, and two, experience. What are you going to look for on their CV and let's call them the Cloud Ecosolution Architect. That's the title. What skills, what experience are you going to look for that's going to be your indicator that you want to have an interview with this person?
We have an official role at ANS called Ecosystem Architect, right? And we have 3 employed as ecosystem architects. And I'll tell you what, man, two of them really differ in role. Basically, think of it like this. You have to have somebody that is this is going to be difficult, an enterprise ecosystem architect who can oversee the entire tube map, or the whole map of the ecosystem. So think of it as like,
has someone got a tube map that you can bring up, a tube map? Just because I think we've mentioned a few times, we haven't mentioned it for about 3 or 4 episodes, and it might be worth just setting the context.
Let me bring it up. Yeah, absolutely, man. I'll share my screen right now. If you just give me a second.
Yep.
Okay. So you'll have a bunch of cities in your business, right? And the cities, we always look at things as cities. So you've got data city, which is king and queen of the platform. You'll have custom dev city, you'll have biz app city, you have low code city, and this is all wrapped around with security, right? So security kind of wraps this whole thing. When you zoom into low code city, there are different lines in low code city. So you'll have your technical line, which is this one. I'm moving my mouse pointer along here. I hope it's blue. And that effectively focuses on the technology, right? So we have some ecosystem architects who are super good at defining things like ALM and security and environments. Okay. Then you have your people line. Your people line is really around those relationships that Anna and Andrew were talking around. So your strategic management. By the way, these little dots are indicative, right? These change. There's way more. I think we're probably at about 100 of them in the target operating model. So we probably need to update this. And this people line will change. So as I'm saying, you kind of want program owner, enterprise architecture, all these people involved. And you have to drive a layer of adoption here. The process line, and you can see I've duplicated data strategy. I can't remember what I was doing, but anyway. So the process line is really where this gets really detailed. Now, the process line is a mixture of technical people who understand business process. Okay. So what is the thing we need to do to build out, and this is low code specific, right? What is the thing we need to build out a maker support process? And there will be tools, like we need to have a thing in service now. We need to have SLAs and KPIs set up and all that jazz. So that gets quite big, right? And actually, this is the most complicated line. And then your portfolio is around maker enablement. So actually, how do we drive these makers to build things that are useful? Okay. Where do we direct them to? How do they do this thing? Now, what we worked out is that these stops on this map connecting up to the target operating model. So this is the model we look at. We call it the 6 Ps. It's setting your purpose, which is what Andrew and Anna were talking about very clearly. So like, what is the thing that you're doing? Okay. Your plan wraps your purpose, and then your platform, process, people, and portfolio live inside your plan. And you're always wanting to build those. And actually what you find is that in the beginning, you may start out with a lot of portfolio in whatever you're doing, but that'll take a dip as you get the guardrails in place in your start to structure phase. You will then find that will grow with people, your portfolio will grow with people, but then there still needs to be an element of governance that's put in place, right? So when that governance gets put in place, actually the people takes a little bit of a dip, because the more governance you have and the more automation you have, the fewer people you need to have managing the platform. Okay, so what we did is we sat down and we were like, all right, what if these things are technical? So we looked at all the things and we were like, okay, the platform line is obviously technical. We need to have somebody like a Craig White who understands this technology and can actually talk to a customer and say, what would your environment strategy look like? How is your department set up? How is your organization set up? Okay, so we kind of have to go through that program there. What we then do is we have Azim, and Azim is a absolute legend, but he is not technical. Azim is a process genius. So that dude goes in and starts talking about support structures and all that jazz. And then we have people like Janet Robb, who are brilliant at organization enablement. Like Janet is wonderful at that. Now, I am an enterprise ecosystem architect by trade, right? So I can cover this whole thing at a minimum of level 200 on every piece. So I can go in to talk to a customer about monitoring. I can talk to customers about building out support processes, about governance, about training and enablement, and all sorts of things. Maybe even level 400 and sometimes 500 on the technology. Okay, but I know where my strengths are. One of my strengths is not doing things like Azure DevOps. So I'm really good at ALM, but I don't know that. So what I do is I parachute people from the business in. But with the ecosystem architect role, what we worked out is that the enterprise architect will kind of have a higher level bird's eye view. It's kind of like standing on the moon. Okay. But then as you drill down, you might find that your one ecosystem architect is really talented on the process piece. And they're like, yeah, that's my jam. I'm super good at that, but I'll hook up with my technical ecosystem architects on the platform line. So actually, the role description we have for this stuff doesn't always drive down the technology route, okay? It is very much driven down the empathy route, the listening route, the compassion route, consultancy, primary thing here. One of the things we put in the role is we said, we don't want people who cannot stand in front of a customer and actually present and then get feedback and pivot quickly.
Yes.
Like that Friends episode when Ross is yelling pivot when they're trying to take the sofa upstairs. It's like, you have to move. Like if a customer says, how does this bolt into my monitoring strategy? Sure, no problem. Let me tell you, right? So you need to understand at least at level 100, but you need to be able to focus. The other thing that we figured out about the role is that the folks that we need here are not going to be like hyper nerds. Okay. Really relatable, really like consultative. And actually, we're going back to the age-old discussion around what does a consultant do. And actually, all of this to an extent, we're just really good at some pieces. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's cool. One thing I have the devil's advocate on, okay? This is low code city. Take me back to slide 27.
Yeah, so with Data City.
Exactly.
So,
Data City,
okay.
but also you've got Biz App City, but really
On purpose.
I would say Biz Apps could be, they're all business applications. I suppose I've got a bias to Microsoft Biz Apps in my thinking of how you've labeled that. But, let's bring in 3 cloud platforms. Let's bring in, AWS. Let's bring in Google Cloud Platform, and let's bring in Azure, of course. Are you expecting that individual to be at level 100, 200 across this slide here, which is outside just low code? And, you've got custom city there as well. Yeah, so what are your thoughts?
No, I'm not. So one of the things that I found is that when you're starting to look at that, Mark, all we're doing is if they're doing low-code city, right, that Google Cloud Platform or Amazon or SAP or whatever it is just a connector up to Data City. That's all it is, right? Andrew's got a really good slide. Andrew and Anna built a wonderful slide talking about the different neighborhoods from an integration perspective.
Yep.
So what was interesting, have you got it? So just to remember, I know he'll present it, right? So I just want you to think, right? You have your business applications neighborhood. Andrew, what did you call it?
The core business systems neighborhood.
On the bottom of the slide, I've committed it to memory. On the bottom of the slide, you kind of have that like low-code piece with all the Dataverse stuff. That's that. Custom Dev City, be Custom Dev City. Integration City lives here. What's interesting is that you hadn't built that slide yet, and we hadn't seen it, right?
Yeah. We did this totally separately. Yeah.
Yeah. We kind of know the architecture that needs to be. So honestly, Mark, for me, any third party or different application that doesn't live in the Microsoft Cloud stack is just a connection up, right?
Here's my thing. If we go back to the strategic pyramid, and I bring in a whole bunch of SAP architects, they don't give an F about my low code city, right? They don't, and for them, it's not just about connections. As far as they're concerned, the world is only SAP, right? And so if you're having an engagement at the C level of the organization, I feel that if you're going to be strategic, you can't be strategic about this one little piece and forget about the actual whole fucking organization, which is many pieces. And so my concern is, if I'm saying I'm an ecosystem, am I saying a single, as in single ecosystem, or are we talking about the ecosystem of the entire organization?
So this is exactly my frame of reference when it comes down to your area of kind of expertise. And an ecosystem architect that does low code Power Platform is going to focus on low code, right?
Yeah.
And that's their area of influence. But when you zoom out, so I can zoom out, dude. When I've done work with Salesforce, with Mendix. So for me, the platform line just changes. I'm just like, screw it, man. Cool. Another platform, kick ass. My processes are still relatively the same. Same with my people and my portfolio. But what that means is that my platform line becomes different. So as a higher level ecosystem architect, you're just zooming out, right? It gets difficult because you then have to do reading. You have to understand architecture from a technical perspective, but also you have to understand the structure of the business. And that's where techies fall down.
My perspective on this, and I think it's probably safe to say that, when Andrew and Chris go to work, Chris is much deeper into the specifics of that low code ecosystem, and I'm probably more zoomed out and spend more time with Azure technologies and data platform technologies and that type of thing. But I do think that there's probably a spectrum on which you can define, what an ecosystem architect does. But I think really importantly, there is a difference between the ecosystem architect and the cloud strategist. That cloud strategist is, I think, even more zoomed out. And where I have going back to the example that I mentioned earlier with this industrial company that's been bought by private equity, I have a really good relationship with a very smart They call them an enterprise architect, but he's effectively an ecosystem architect, right? And a lot of times what he's doing is he's taking the strategy that really zoomed out, let's assemble the data platform, Azure infrastructure, the security services, low code, core business systems, et cetera. Let's assemble all of that. He's then translating it and doing the work of parceling it out to the various architects, call them, whatever you want to call them, but to the various architects who go much, much deeper with that technology. So I think that the relationship between cloud strategist, which, Mark, going back to your question about what's in the job spec, the cloud strategist has to be, they have to be a consultant. They have to be able to, stand on their feet to facilitate, right? So to guide senior people through a process of establishing and renewing and refreshing their vision. But they also need to have some experience, preferably some depth in at least one of those technology areas and some breadth in multiple technology areas. So it is something that only comes after you've moved around a bit, but in defense of not getting so focused on I am an F&O solution architect.
Yeah.
This is something you want to do in your career. You have to move around. You have to move around when you're kind of at the mid senior levels, I think.
Interesting. And it's good clarification for me, because in what we'd spoken about, I really thought it was up to today, was much more broader rather than the ecosystem. And what I understood from Chris is around the low code specific ecosystem.
It's wider.
It's wider?
Yeah. You just got to remember, man, the lens I'm taking in this scenario, the lens I'm taking is low code.
Yeah.
But the lens doesn't always have to be low code ever. You can literally take that model that I showed you, right? Zoom out and go something else or all of it. But there's always, you just need to know to change the wording and how the people interact with it. It's
yeah.
This is my favorite slide, by the way, that you're about to see.
So Chris, since you've seen this, should I do a quick build up and kind of tell the story here? Okay.
Yeah.
So for those of you who haven't seen, I'm going to fly through this. Anna and I have been doing an hour-long session at conferences just on this slide pretty much. But, to just fly through this, we've taken the city model and we've broken the ecosystem down into neighborhoods. So what you'll see is this is higher level than what Chris showed. But in most cloud ecosystems, we have what we call the core platform services neighborhood. Think of this as the municipal services, city hall, police, fire, rescue, power, water. Here we have things like, these icons are not called out, but we've got data governance and data lineage and identity management and application monitoring and various governance tools, managed environments, app insights, security center, et cetera. I like to go next to OneLake. OneLake is the data lake technology that's part of Microsoft Fabric. And, OneLake becomes the downstream destination for most of the data distribution within the organization. This is, if you are watching on screen, the kind of the golden highway or the golden mile here of your city is the connection between OneLake and your integration neighborhood. How does data get integrated at the center and pushed into OneLake? So now we're downtown. This is the center of the city. Data integration, event-driven integration, logic-driven, batch integration, master data management, everything when it comes to shoveling data around. This is the downtown. This is the main artery of the city. Most organizations have a series of core business systems. So here we're representing those core business systems. So Mark, we're getting a little bit outside of Microsoft. We've got bespoke or a custom core business system built, say, with Azure SQL. But let's say we're running SAP for our ERP or Workday for our HR. We might, so these systems then integrate via the integration neighborhood, but then we might be migrating a legacy application out of virtual machines or out of on-prem, say, to Dynamics for CRM. We might be doing similarly with a custom application built with Power Platform. These apps, of course, are going to keep their data inside of Dataverse, and that is going to pipe right into the central artery of the city. Together, this forms the core business systems neighborhood. So your core business systems might look different than this. We've tried to be representative about it. Next up, we have what I think Chris was talking about, low-code city. We call it the application portfolio, and it's a little bit misleading, right? Because low-code happens in core business systems as well, which is why we don't make that distinction here. So most organizations have a whole portfolio of legacy applications that over time, we want to migrate them to, say, Dataverse-backed Power Platform. But we also might be getting a little more sophisticated, and there's a bunch of integration patterns here where we're maybe landing data inside of a data landing zone, and then we're using various integration tools to pipe that data out to the various environments that make up our application portfolio. And what we've done so far is we've talked a lot about structured data, but there's a whole other story here for unstructured data. So think the files, photos, videos, sound clips, etc. This is all unstructured data. It might be living in network storage. Remember the Z drive, right? So I'm actually working with an organization where we had to get the data out of the third floor of their office building. So let's just say it's network storage, but we're going to migrate that using various migration tools to, again, in this composite ecosystem, a combination of blob storage, M365.
When you say that they're on network, shares, etc., Z drive, are you talking about ransomware city? Right.
We'll just rename it here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things to keep in mind here throughout is that the goal here, we've studied and we've looked at a number of different organizations from our collective past, and we've tried to build a composite. So in this reference ecosystem, you make a mistake if you look at it and say, well, we don't do it that way, right? The idea is that this is a composite of many, many different organizations. And whether you're keeping your unstructured data in network storage today or in data center today, or maybe you've already gone to Blob and SharePoint, right? Great. Let's look at the other parts of your ecosystem and how it all hangs together. Or ask yourself the question, are you using tools, say, like Microsoft Viva, right? Are you using those sorts of tools to make sense of that unstructured data and to feed that back into your core systems? And now we get to, so that's our unstructured data neighborhood. And now we get to what is, I think, presently my favorite neighborhood. Let's take that data out of Blob and SharePoint and use cognitive search to index that data. We're also using cognitive search to index the data in OneLake, and then we're using cognitive search for a variety of things, chiefly to enable AI workloads and to enable enterprise search, which is, say, delivered through various application user experiences, but we like Power Platform for this. We might also be piping data through APIs out to the open internet, of course, in a secure way. And we might be using Synapse technology, say data warehouse or real-time analytics, to feed our analytical workloads, which again, our go-to here is also on Power Platform. It's Power BI. So this then becomes our data distribution neighborhood. And I think that the key for the cloud strategist and for your more higher, your more experienced ecosystem architects is having the knowledge and the ability to take the strategy of the organization, the guiding principles, the targeted outcomes, and to stitch them together in such a way that this is the ecosystem that's going to get you there. And yes, we're going to tap into each of these neighborhoods and architect them to a deeper level. So, Chris's subway map zooms in on that application portfolio neighborhood. These play really well together, I think.
I love it. This is great. The build up, the build out, etc. of the site is great. If you're seeing this, what's wrong with what Andrew's got here? What's missing? What have you seen in organizations that you feel he has overlooked? Would love to hear your feedback. But put it in the comments either on YouTube. Or put it directly on the website we've got set up for this, because we definitely want to keep this is fluid, right? We want to keep refining this in our thinking as we go forward. And so if you feel that, hey, but you've forgotten this or you've forgotten that, let's hear. But this is fantastic. And I think that clarity, I'm going to always drill into how do I practically apply it? What skills do I need in my career to be able to play at this new level, because I feel people want tangible how-tos, how to go to their next level in their careers. How do I become an ecosystem architect? What skills do I need? And I think it's a growing, layering of skills. And one we haven't covered is communication, right? You got to be an expert communicator. And I liked the term you had earlier there, Chris, is that you need to be able to take feedback and pivot, right? I think that is so important. You can't go, deer in headlights type scenario when all of a sudden the customer throws something out of left field.
Oh, for sure, man. It's something I've learned over the time. Like when I started doing this, when I was in Microsoft, I always had this vision of what it should look like. And I won't lie, I've been in some pretty precarious situations, man. Like with some customers, it's been really interesting. And one of the things I learned is that actually, I'm not sure, but I'll find out for you is a perfectly wonderful answer to give somebody.
100%.
Yes.
It's hard because I remember somebody asking me about something around, what was it? Security and service principles. And I was just like, you know what? I legit actually do not know that. So I said to them, I said, you know what? I don't know, but I've got a really cool person in security that I'll have a chat with. Give me a few days and I'll find out. Yeah. It was awesome because I had the chat. I learned some really good stuff. And I have this one slide that I show people in our presentations, man.
Chris, while you're pulling that up, before I forget, I do want to, you said you were talking a moment ago about pivoting and not knowing something and admitting when you don't know something. I think that the companion to that, right, is that one of the most difficult things, I think, for more senior ecosystem architects and cloud strategists to get right is to shed their loyalty to what they consider to be their home technology or the place they came from, the place that they identify with. So, in my case, I've been fortunate to get to work in business applications and Power Platform and Azure technologies. But, by far, most of the architecture work that I've done as a solution architect in my past has been in the Microsoft business apps space. And that was a journey for me, right? Is shedding my loyalty. I have very little loyalty to Power Platform or Dynamics at this point because you have to look at everything and say, someone else's tech might be the answer. And that is a journey you have to go on, but you have to be open-minded and eyes wide open about that.
But see, even what you've said there, you've only dealt with Microsoft. In your thinking, as in what you're saying there, right? Yes, you're dealing with the 3 different platforms that sit within Microsoft broadly, M365, Azure, and BizApps. But I suppose part of the org that I'm currently working for has expanded my thinking on is, a multi-cloud platform that is multi-vendor, and not just Microsoft world.
So fun fact, I did much earlier in my career, I did work on SAP, Oracle, PeopleSoft, and Google tech as well. But I just work on Microsoft because it's vastly superior, right? But
that's why we're all in the game, right?
Exactly. Are there many non-Microsoft folks listening to this podcast? Because if there are, we want to hear from you. We want to know, why are you listening and how can we engage more with you? Because you have something super valuable to offer here.
Yeah, we need to learn. We need to learn, man.
We do.
But this is why working with Jason is epic, because Jason is ex-Mendix.
Yeah.
So he's like, dude, why? What about this? What about this? And I'm like, you know what? It's good because he keeps us really honest. And, the target operating model we have made is not just Microsoft based at all. Jason's thinking in that has been huge. And we also read a lot of the OutSystems stuff.
Yeah.
That's from the low code perspective. And we milled around and tried to figure it out, man. But the thing I've learned, in going through this program with a number of organizations over the years, this is not new to ANS, by the way.
You misspelled organizations.
Yeah, well, it's, by the way, this is England, dude. It's interesting because you cannot know it all. Like, I'll tell you what, when we were working with one org, they were like, hey man, can you do a session, can you do a work stream on documentation best practice? I'm like, 100%. Went to our team. I'm like, hey, folks, we don't have anything on documentation best practice in the enablement program. Shall we make it? They're like, yes. So we did. Another one. Can you do something on, freaking hell, there's just loads of them that cover, like make a architectural best practice. Yeah, sure, no worries. What do? We just go and make it. And the good thing is because we have such an array of skills, but we tell people and we show them the slide. And we like, the more orgs we work with and the more good ideas that we get, we're just happy to share the content when we build it out. So for each of those tube stops that you saw on that slide, the reams and reams and reams, and guys, I'm not joking, it is deep content, like deep. I'm talking like 100 and 150 slides a pop per thing there. Okay.
You have a reputation for making a lot of slides, Chris.
I do.
You do. Yes, that is very true.
And that's not a bad thing, right? As in, there's been too much confusion in the past around paper and slides. And I think, you can have 20 slides in a animation format that really illustrates and builds out a story. Yeah. And people go, what, you got that many slides? Yeah, for that one point? Yeah, but it takes people on a journey, because if you just dump it on a single slide, it's nothing. Yeah.
No. And that's sort of what we do, right? So we have a lot of examples. So in the decks, things like environment strategies, security strategies, data policies, we have lots of examples of where this has happened in the past, right? But when we do a new one, we just rip out the naming conventions, rip out the names, remove customer names, and be like, cool, we'll just add it as an example. Yeah. So now the next customer that takes this, and what we're also trying to do is connect our organizations. Yeah. So we're going, okay, customer A, speak to these people. Right, and like, let's just share, because this is ecosystem enablement. You're not sharing data, you're sharing kind of strategy and planning. So this has been wonderful, because, the orgs that we're working with are just like, hey, man, that's quite cool. We're in.
Do you ever have the scenario where people go, what, you're taking the learning from our organization and you're going to make it publicly available, like, WTF type thing, and that you're taking our IP? Or are they much more pragmatic?
Most orgs that we work with are super pragmatic. Like, we don't make it publicly available. We'll share our best practice and our tube maps. Mm-hmm. But most orgs that I would say, we haven't had a single organization say to us, no, Chris, don't, make our environment strategy vanilla and never share it. Basically, I'm going to give you an example, like a 3-tier environment strategy. That is not another company's IP. No. That is common knowledge. It's common sense. Yeah. Like, a departmental-based environment strategy is the same thing. Knowing that using Google Sheets and Dropbox and a DLP is a fucking dumb idea, right? Don't do it. You can't really claim what's... No. Yeah.
So it's really, what I'm seeing there is we're extracting best practice and making it available, which is not IP. It's just the best ways of doing some things. And I see Andrew cringe, because are you one of these ones that hate the word best practice, or?
No. I was thinking I'm in a CTO role now, and as I've kind of worked through and gotten to know this role, I've been thinking about just mentors that I've had who have served as CTOs in the past, and one of them is a fellow named Vishwas Laley, who's the CTO at a former company of mine. And I asked him this very question one day. I said, hey, Vishwas, I've got these ideas. Should I share them? Should I write about them? And he basically told me in so many words, Vishwas, share almost everything, because I acknowledge that you don't have a monopoly on good ideas, basically. And if you don't share it, someone else is going to share it. Yeah. So, when it comes to doing that with so he and that idea have been very influential with me. And one of the things that I tell organizations I work with is, listen, I'm not going to give away your secrets, right? I'm going to anonymize, and we're going to have the judgment to know when something shouldn't be shared. But I actually think that that's a huge benefit of working with a partner, is that that partner is sort of like, the Marco Polo of the cloud, right? They're collecting knowledge, and they're collecting experience, and they're circulating, those best practices and those ideas throughout the entire industry. So I think that's a feature, not a bug, personally.
It's interesting, because it really goes back to mindsets and how you operate. And this kind of, one of the things that struck me in Chris's presentation at MPPC was he was sharing stuff on screen and, you know, of the ANS experience, and people were like, can we get a copy of this? And Chris was like, yeah, man, like, I'm happy for you to build on it, grow on it, that type of thing. Now, I've been in organizations where it was like, no, we keep it all to ourselves. That's our secret sauce. Like, we don't give it away. But in that kind of attitude, and I'm seeing it more from, if you like, outside the big tier vendors, right? There is much more as let's collaborate, let's all learn, and let's all grow together, rather than this is our secret sauce. Because there's so many ways to create secret sauce, but there's these commonalities where the entire ecosystem grows together. I mean, when I'm looking in the low-code space right now, and customer after customer after customer after customer that are in the enterprise space that have bought, you know, over 50,000 seats of premium licensing, right? What's their number one problem that Microsoft has with them? They're not consuming, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody knows inside an organization how to create a repeatable, scalable model that encourages innovation, that encourages everybody playing, that encourages not just IT locking the fuck down on everything, right? And then you see of these lighthouse customers like Luma Technologies, like Slumberjay, where it took one person to actually go, you know what I'm going to do?
Yeah.
But there's so many companies that I'm coming across, they don't know how to do it. And it's not documented anywhere. There's no how-to guide. There's, you know, there's a void of information out there of repeatability on how to scale big organizations in low code.
Spot on, man.
You know, most of it has got nothing to do with technology. It's got to do with mindsets, thinking. It's got to do with setting up patterns of communities inside an organization, creating an environment where people can self-serve and grow without there being a single choke bottleneck. Most organizations still have IT as their choke net bottleneck in their adoption of low code. Crazy stuff. I've heard of, you know, admins going in and every time somebody creates a new app, they just go in and delete it and stuff like that. And, oh, that's not what we're allowing people to do. And I'm just like, what the, you know, but it's a mindset thing, and it's a process that I think that is missing. Not a process, it's a thinking and a model to operate at scale inside organizations.
Chris, what did I say? What did I say during the panel? Something about CIOs being shit at their job, if that's how you're approaching things. Something. This was in the first 30 seconds of this panel that Chris and I were on at South Coast Summit this past week. And someone asked a question and I said something to the effect of, yeah, that's not right. And if you're a CIO and that's how you're doing it, then you are quite frankly shit at your job. That is a near direct quote of myself.
You're dropping a lot of expletives these days, Andrew. I'm concerned.
Mark, do you know what seagull syndrome is?
No.
Okay. Andrew has seagull syndrome. You know what he does? He's like a fucking seagull, man. He flies and shits all over everything that leaves. Yeah.
I love it.
And on that note,
let's switch gears. What are we learning at the moment? What's new? We've had a couple of hectic weeks. I'll go first while you can gather your thoughts. Gartner just came out with their low-code Magic Quadrant.
So I saw that.
And I find it interesting because if you put Gartner and Forrester against each other, I know which one I'm showing customers. I'm showing the Forrester.
Yeah.
What I find funny, right, is that these analysts, right, they are competing companies. They are funded by vendors, right, to paint them in good light. Like, come on, like, is it totally devoid of any money transacting? I don't know if I've said on the show before, but when I eons ago in my career, I worked with Sun Microsystems, which of course doesn't exist anymore. And it was my first exposure to analysts at a big tech event and just how they were treated like royalty. You know, they were bow and scrape and, priority seatings, the box seat, and I'm like, I see how the system works. You butter the right people up the right way and you get a favorable analyst report, right? And when I looked at what came out with Gartner, and it being quite different than Forrester, I have questions.
I mean, they were buttered by different folks.
That's right.
One of them was cream cheesed and the other was I don't know. Like,
the thing is, companies make their decision on those charts. I've been in and they go,
right.
They make those decisions on those charts.
Yeah. And guys like us use those charts to justify the things we're saying. We're like, don't trust us. Look at the chart here.
Absolutely.
This one, not that one, not that one. Look at this one.
Yeah.
You've got to start thinking. The thing that's interesting, though, is that when you look at the previous years, Microsoft Mendix and OutSystems actually dropped. And the reason they dropped down in the execution and the ability to execute is because, as you said, you can sell a crap load of licenses, but nobody actually builds things.
Yeah.
Mendix just shot up far right. Do you know why? They created a digital execution practice in Mendix. Okay. So there is a digital execution practice in Mendix. Hashtag thank you, Jason Earnshaw, for sharing all this wonderful info.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because they have now done that. So they're getting adoption. They're not talking about making the thing all the time. They're talking about enablement. So when you look at the Mendix roles, and actually, I will run an experiment with you right now. When you look at the Mendix roles on LinkedIn, and you go and type in the word ecosystem architect, they rebranded a whole bunch of their people to ecosystem architects.
Interesting.
Mark, do you have the graphic of can you share the new Magic Quadrant?
I just tried to Google it before, but I haven't found one that shows Gartner's latest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's so many of these graphics, right? You don't know, do I have the right one? I don't know that I've got the right one, no. And I don't want to probably put it on screen because, as we've seen, some people have got smacked on their hands for publicly saying stuff. Shout out to our dear friend in Finland. What's his name?
Jukka.
Jukka.
Yeah, They scolded him. Oh no, let's make something public and put it in a graph, but do not tell people that we've made something public and put it in a graph and shed it all over the internet.
Yeah.
That's like, seriously, ridiculous.
What were you going to add, Andrew? Were you going to add something to?
I'm trying to think of where I was. Oh yeah, I was just going to say that, listen, we this crowd, we all work in the Microsoft landscape, but so I think that we have lots of good things to say about Microsoft. But I do think that, and I'm not up to speed on what Chris just said, kind of the change that Mendix has made. But if it's half as good as what Chris says, then good for Mendix, right? This is a mistake I think that Microsoft does make, right? Where you have Microsoft sellers who are often loading customers up with premium licenses that don't have the level of follow through that is needed, and the customer has to go out to a partner and get the partner engaged. And I think that, in the customers where that works, it works very well. But I do think, this has been a long-standing problem with Power Platform specifically, right? Is getting, as Mark, you said, getting those things consumed. And I think it's really improving. But, advice to Microsoft, you need to continue to invest here.
It's hard.
Yeah.
There's a lot involved, right? Can you see the screen I'm sharing now? Which was another interesting thing that did come out of Gartner this week, which was the Gartner Top 10 Strategic Technology Trends for 2024 that they see coming. And I just thought, no surprise that security trust is top and center. I don't know in Europe, but, in ANZ, we've had a whole bunch of ransomware attacks that have been in the extreme. In other words, one organization decided that they were going to take the ransomware people on and call their bluff. And they leaked out to the market thousands and thousands of medical records and IDs. People had to go and have their passports replaced, driver's license, all sorts of things. And that's why I called, that neighborhood where stuff's sitting on sands. Oh, we got it on a sand. It's fine. It's, we got it on a network share. It's fine. Until And, in that scenario, I'm not going to mention the company name, but they had been in there for months harvesting. It wasn't all of a sudden, we've had a data breach. It wasn't until they were told, by the way, people, we have all your shit, pay up some money. And there was a whole publishing of all the conversations that went on with the ransomware people. And they were really like, hey, listen, at the end of the day, we are business people doing what we're doing, like hacking your systems. You got to think that we're looking at it from that perspective. This is not just us being, some script kiddies or something like that. This is our business. We go in, don't call our bluff. Don't think we're not going to execute and follow through. And man, but it shows the exposure to so many, for me, I'm like Excel in most organizations is probably the biggest risk factor because it's a sheer file on a network. Access databases mean the amount of enterprises that these are still prevalent in is just mind-blowing. Yeah. And you know what? And then I've spoken with enterprise that said, man, our security is so solid, there's no way we would. And I'm like, oh my gosh. See. Famous last words, right?
Right.
But even if
don't say that. Yeah, don't. No,
yeah, you curse yourself.
Not. Yeah.
I find it interesting around sustainability. I don't know if you saw in the last 24 hours, the EU have come out that they're going to delay their new ECG requirements enforcement around sustainability, which I think is interesting, being that it was incredibly onerous on organizations and what they had to meet by what deadline. And so they've apparently pushed it out 2 years, my understanding, which is going to be a sigh of relief for a lot of people. But I think that there's a come to Jesus moment for a lot of orgs that have realized they are so not far from compliance. It's the job to get there was a lot more, because when you look at the 3 tiers of the 3 levels that are required in there, one of the levels are 100% outside your control, which is all your suppliers that, part of your supply chain, and where do they sit from a sustainability perspective. And no organization right now, or very few, can provide the data that shows their entire supply chain's sustainability compliance. And I think that's why perhaps they've moved it out 2 years, because they realize the work to get there is massive.
This is something that HSO has been working on, right? Is a data platform proposition around ESG data specifically.
Yeah.
I think we'll probably see more partners and more technology vendors jumping into that. But listen, for most people, the reprieve is very welcome, I think.
What else? What has else been on your radar? New happenings, surprising?
I have been so buried in this house move / the previous house flooding that this has been a couple of weeks for just getting things done. So I'm not the guy to ask here.
Yeah,
I've relearned it's awful.
Yeah. I had one benefit this week that in fact, I'll show you to illustrate the point, just because I can at the moment. Wired security cam right now live feeding from my property, and this vehicle I put in to get some rust taken out 1.5 years ago, and I only got it back this week. It's been that long for them to. You imagine living with one vehicle at a rural location like I am, but it's pretty schmick, and it'll last me another 10 years. It's a collector's edition. The problem with it, I haven't taken off the property since, is that it's the highest, it's the number 1 stolen vehicle according to IAG insurance in my region, because it's old school and it's a vehicle that just keeps going.
That says a lot about your region, that is the number 1 stolen vehicle.
Yeah, it's a pretty popular set of wheels. It's a pretty popular set of wheels. So that's a bit of, over a year for me to finally get my my wheels back. But I'm happy that I have it.
Nice. Congrats.
That is cool. Yeah. I'm very glad, dude, because that's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, one vehicle, definitely. Okay. I suppose we're wrapped. We're finished with conferences for the year, have we?
Dude, I have one more.
I've got some more. Yeah.
Definitely got some more, man. I'm going to ESPC in Amsterdam. Woo woo! European SharePoint Conference. Yeah, we're running Copilot in a day.
And they know about your.
I know exactly what you're going to say. Whatever you're thinking, absolutely.
What's he thinking?
Mate, he's thinking I'm going to go and destroy the place and get lost in Amsterdam and never return.
I could never imagine you doing something like that, man.
I was working for a company once. Super out of character. I don't know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
I was working for a company once, and I got invited to one of the conferences in Amsterdam, and my boss was like, "No, you will die." I'm like, "No, what, bro? You got to remember, I'm not locked in here with you. You're locked in here with me."
I love it. It's so good. Is there any birthdays coming up this week?
Mine's next week.
Next week.
I've got my get together on Friday, which is going to be intense.
Is that code for piss up?
No, bro, I don't drink.
Oh.
Nah.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then my actual birthday is on the 27th.
And how old are you going to be, mate?
Mate, I'm turning 40.
Wow. Shit.
Yeah.
40.
40.
Mate, I'm still a year or two off from 40.
Yeah. I'm sure. You're the one I strive to be like, Mark.
Says the guy who worked for Sun Microsystems. That's,
Yeah. Sun Microsystems. It was like the second MVP ever.
You know what they say? Life begins at 40.
Yeah.
You've heard that
I've heard
song,
that a
right?
couple of times.
You wonder why you feel so naughty?
Yeah. One of my pals said it to me on the weekend. I was like, yeah, I know.
Well, really, 40 is what, the new 30? The new 25?
Yeah. Bro, when I was 25, man, I was like scrapping around for cash, couldn't figure out how to get my car working, working some like shitty network admin job. So yeah, I'm not saying that that's bad now, but I promise you back then in South Africa it was not easy.
It is nicer the money you make the older you get, right? As in the things that
dude.
I've thought of, like, oh my gosh, I used to really worry about money in that respect. And you can't imagine, what you would earn now back then. But yeah, it's nice the way life goes.
Let me tell you something. If I earned now what back then at the age of 25, I would be dead.
Yeah.
100%. Yep. I'd be in Samoa somewhere.
Samoa.
Yeah.
That's a weird location. That's very specific.
yeah. Right.
I would have started a hut building business with a dance crew in Samoa and a small crayfish company that would have then gone bankrupt because I spent all my time building huts, and my huts would be terrible. Yeah. I mean, I could carry on, man. This whole thing's a tangent.
This is incredibly specific.
Yeah.
This is incredibly specific.
I love it.
Oh yeah, dude. I would have a straw hat and I probably like that guy Monkey D. Luffy from One Piece, the cartoon series, and it would be incredibly sunny all the time. But my hut building business would then tank, and I would have to start my crayfish building business again in Samoa with the zest to travel to Croatia.
Let's wrap it up for the week. And Mr. Dorrington sends his apologies. He wish he was here, but he has been literally smashed with workloads at the moment. So we expect him back on the next one. You notice Anna had to drop off early because of family time, which is fantastic. I bet you Andrew's missing her. That's right, Andrew, right? You are missing her.
I am. So I'm going to meet up. I'm going to go meet her tomorrow.
Right.
For tonight, I continue to unpack the house.
Nice. Something that caught me out this week. I finally posted the audio version of their first show.
Nice.
Anna Demning doesn't exist anymore on LinkedIn.
No, does not. Does not.
She did a very patriarchy thing of taking your name, I see.
We discussed this a lot, and my attitude is no expectation of name taking, but very welcome. I'm very happy to share. And our daughter, Alexandra Jennifer Welch, I think, Anna wanted us all to have the same last name.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Very good, very good. Well, sirs, thank you very much. We'll see you on the next loop.
Yeah, thanks, dudes.
Bye, guys.
Ciao, ciao.